This is the first of 3 training modules on the foundations of self-determination. This is called the Principles of Self-Determination. People describe freedom in many different ways. For some, it's doing whatever you want, whenever you want. For others, it means moving out of the house, living on your own, or eating anything in the pantry any time, day or night. But freedom for people with disabilities means all that and more. It means living your life and making as many decisions about your life as possible with the needed support of family, friends, and allies. This is called self-determination, and it's based on 5 principles: freedom, authority, support, responsibility, confirmation. Founder and Executive Director of the Center for Self-Determination, Tom Nerney, explains the principles.
And here we're talking about simply the everyday freedoms that everybody takes for granted, not special freedoms. We have always maintained that the founding documents of what we mean by self-determination are nothing less than the Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
The Center for Self-Determination is the primary clearinghouse and training and technical assistance center for self-determination in the United States and in other countries, and it is headquartered in Michigan. One of the center's main goals is to move the power and authority over resources directly to all people with disabilities, as well as to those with mental illness and seniors, with help from friends, family, and allies. A popular public speaker and self-determination advocate, Ricky Broussard, captures his audience's attention with his top 10 list of how self-determination has worked in his life.
Now that I'm living on my own, I get to go out and eat the food that I want. And actually, I go to the grocery store and pick out the groceries that I want to eat. So that's real good for me too. When I used to live at the group home, my girlfriend, she could come over, but she couldn't stay because I used to live in a group home. But now that I'm living on my own, if I wanted her, she can come. But and if I don't want her, she don't come. But she can. And when it's time for her to go, if I want her to stay, she can stay. But when it's time for her to go, I say, you got to go. See you tomorrow. When I used to live in a group home, that wasn't the place where I wanted to live originally. Because where I wanted to, and which I am now, I wanted to get closer to my family, where my family can come over and we can all chill out. I have the opportunity to have my own staff, and I can hire and fire who I want. And actually, I can decide who touches my body and when I want it to. Because all of you in here, husbands, wives, if you don't want to be touched by your husband or your wife, you can tell her, I don't feel like being touched. But see, I didn't have that opportunity at first because the staff, they're hired by the agency. They weren't hired by me. So I couldn't tell that staff or that person, no, I don't want you to give me a shower today. So I had to let them do that. But now I can hire and fire my own staff and decide who touches my body and when I want them to. And the number one reason, like I said earlier, the real most important thing is to me that I can have my grandmother. And actually, she has been over several times, and she's spent the night, and she's cooked for me.
Self-determination has allowed Kathy Nowacki to continue to run her business and provide top-notch care for her 93-year-old mom. She chose the caregiver for her elderly mother, and it was a perfect match.
Well, it was important for me in 2 ways. One, we were with an agency at one time. In the course of a 24-hour period, when my mother lived up north, sometimes there were 3 different people through there on a day. My mom's 93 and a half, and it just led to confusion for her. She, used to say to me on the phone, people are coming and going through here like a revolving door. And I didn't like that. And the quality of care was not what Jen treats my mom like it's her gram. And my mom treats her like she were her granddaughter.
For many years, people with mental illness, people with developmental disabilities, and the frail and elderly populations were segregated, outcast from society. No one knows what that feels like better than Robert Denton. He used to live in an institution and now, because of self-determination, makes all of his choices with some help from family and friends.
Before, I was pushed around, bossed around, and yelled and hollered at.
And now?
I don't have no problems.
Now that you've heard a little more about self-determination, let's take a closer look at the principal definitions. Freedom, to choose a meaningful life in the community. Authority, over a targeted amount of dollars. Support, to organize resources in ways that are life-enhancing and meaningful to the individual. Responsibility, the obligation to use public dollars wisely and to contribute to one's community. Confirmation, of the important role that people must play in a newly redesigned system. The last principle, confirmation, was added to the list after the original four were adopted. Organizers thought they should add another core principle encouraging people to get involved and make sure the principles were carried out. These 5 principles evolved after the Americans with Disabilities Act was put in place in July of 1990. The ADA is a wide-ranging civil rights law that prohibits, under certain circumstances, discrimination based on disability.
One of the few decisions we made early on that was not a mistake was to try and organize this around a set of principles that had operational value. That is, when you talked about freedom, we would then discuss what that meant at an everyday level. And so we never reverted to thinking about what we mean by self-determination as another program. That in fact, it was a different way of organizing long-term supports, period.
Greg and Linda Marshall know what it's like to be told they can't be together. Several years ago, they met and fell in love, but then a staff person began to interfere.
Their staff wouldn't accommodate them, so I would go over to her house, to their apartment, and pick her up and bring her to Greg's house. It was a struggle because nobody wanted them to be together, and I said, why not? They're suited for each other. They enjoy each other's company. They like being together. Show me a law that says people with disabilities or even minor disabilities can't have happiness with one another.
The principles of self-determination establish that people are the planners and decision-makers in how they spend their days and in how they live their lives, with caring assistance available when needed. Those decisions may also include financial responsibility for public funding and the generation of personal income with appropriate assistance. The principles, when implemented correctly, should help the person achieve the goals and dreams that they've always wanted. This concludes this training segment, The Foundations of Self-Determination, the Principles of Self-Determination.